right.
All right. How do you start podcasting?
You have an intro. You introduce yourselves. There's usually a song.
Wait. I think we should do a cold open.
But a cold
this
open
is a cold
really
open,
planned.
bro. You just
Yeah,
plan. You start talking. You edit it in. There is no 3, 2, 1, talk. You're already talking.
I think the main thing is for us to act like we know exactly what we're doing and we're professionals, and I think we got that down. We're fine.
And then cue theme music.
Na 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 na. Music. Done. What did we watch? Let's go. We watched Unbreakable. 2000s. M. Night Shyamalan's.
Oh my god, if that was either one of K3, that would have been horribly racist. I'm glad you're the one that said it.
That is the joke. No one says his name right on purpose. I know his name. I actually enjoy most of his movies. But no, yeah, so Unbreakable.
Why don't we introduce ourselves too? Like, my name is Kelly. I'm going to be one of the hosts for today. I'm a generic cis white guy with absolutely zero opinions worth keeping, but I'll try my best. And
Katie, you go first. You go before me. I'm the
Why?
worm.
Why?
I'm lowly on the totem pole.
Why?
Okay,
Why
fine.
are you lowly
Fine.
on the
Hi.
I'm just asking the question. Why?
I'm
You
Keith.
want to be so special?
My name is Keith, and I'm white, and I have good opinions.
Wow.
that's like the defining part of your personality.
Oh.
My name is Keith, and I'm white, and I have good opinions. I think you're doing a different podcast, my friend.
Oh, whoops. Cue theme music.
Daddy, chill.
Alright. Unbreakable.
Unbreakable. First off, like, who all had seen this before? I know I had not seen it before. I watched it the first time a couple days ago. I had no clue going into it what it was about. So yeah, it was definitely a bit of a shock for me. But yeah, I didn't even know who was involved in it aside from Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson. I didn't know that M. Night Shyamalan was involved in it until his name splashed on the final credits. But yeah, what about y'all? Katie, had you seen this before?
I did not watch this movie. I have seen the others following this, so this is just the only one I didn't watch. I watched them kind of backwards, I guess.
I saw this in theaters when it came out.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. You're old.
Yep. It's true. I've just dated myself. You can carbon date my bones to having seen this movie in theaters. But I liked it. It's like surprise you're watching a comic book movie. And it's also technically one of the first modern comic book films, even though it's not like flashy like a comic book movie you'd expect to see, which I find kind of interesting.
Wait, so you said this is the first one? Were there other movies after this? Because I saw an interview them talking about them wanting to do a trilogy, but it never panned out.
Yeah.
Were there like unofficial follow-ups?
It did. It just took a long, long time.
Yeah, like 20 years.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks like Split 2016 and Glass 2019.
Which did not get great reviews. It kind of got robbed from my remembering of things. But I liked them. I mean, I started with Split, so unknowingly I started with Split.
Yeah, and I'm actually kind of happy to hear that they made a couple more. Honestly, when this movie ended, like not to cut to the end of what I thought of it or anything, but I didn't expect it to be a follow-up. I thought the ending, the way it ended, was a story all in itself. And I saw in an interview where they asked the producer and the actors if they wanted to do it again or if they wanted to do sequels. And the actors, like Bruce Willis, was all about like, yeah, heck yeah, let's do this again. And when they asked Shyamalan, he said, he was like, I guess, like, if y'all want to do a sequel, we can do a sequel, but I really hadn't planned it that way. And I don't know, I had a lot of respect for that because honestly, for me, watching this movie, it felt like a self-contained story. It didn't feel like it really needed a sequel. A sequel would be cool, but you know, if this was the only thing that happened, I'd be totally fine with it, kind of thing. So, how do you say his name? I'm trying not to do the thing you did, but
Shyamalan.
Exactly how it's spelled, man. Get it together.
Shyamalan.
Yeah, well,
there's a Y in there.
You can't read.
Shyamalan.
Wow.
It's Shyamalan.
The racism exploding from your veins.
Just looking at the letters in the word. I don't know, all right? And I'm asking. That's the best thing that an ignorant white person can do, right? Is just ask questions.
All right, so I'm cutting you off. We have not recapped. We've introduced this and then immediately started talking about it. So we watched Unbreakable, movie from the 2000s, as we have denoted, superhero movie, kind of, sort of. I don't know. We'll get into it. It's about a security guard who gets into a fatal train crash on his way back from a job interview in New York and is the only survivor out of hundreds of people. He ends up with a mysterious note on his car, comes to meet this man who, at the beginning of the movie, you see has very, very fragile bones. To sum it up in a very lame way.
He's like a
thinks that he thinks he's a superhero, basically, and kind of hints at it, and then we go through this discovery of it. Is he a superhero? Is he not? It all starts with the note of, how many days have you been sick? Think about it. How long? How have you ever been sick in your life? And it spirals from there. All right, continue.
Yeah, I thought, okay, so first off, it technically starts with the birth of Elijah.
Yes.
And I thought that was a really interesting pick. Like, I'm not a filmmaker, I'm a musician, so I don't know everything about filmmaking, but I did think it was interesting at the beginning, that whole opening scene where it shows the birth of Elijah, that we obviously can tell it's in the past just because of the way people are dressed and stuff like that. But also it was done with like a shaky cam, a handheld cam, or I don't know what they're called, but it's the kind of thing that The Office was done in Battlestar Galactica, where it's kind of like a documentary style with a shaky handheld cam. And it made me feel very uneasy about the scene. Like, you can't quite get your footing, like what's going on. You're a little bit disoriented, which is fine at the beginning of the movie and expected. But by the time we got to Bruce Willis's character, David, on the train, there was completely steady cam, or I don't know what it's called, but there was no shakiness to the camera at all. And I thought that was interesting because the first scene was filmed in a house, or maybe in a basement, or in something, in a solid structure, and everything was kind of shaky all around. Whereas as soon as we got to the first scene with David, he's on a train that's moving, so we're on something that's shaking constantly, but the camera is completely steady, and we're looking directly at his face, and everything feels very calm, in a sense. So I thought that was a nice juxtaposition, that one is stable but shaky, and the next one was in a shaky environment but very stable.
That's a pretty good pickup. I want to talk about sort of theme, not theme, but motif, and just the framing of this movie is like a comic book. If you think back or look back to a lot of the way things are set up and framed, people are in doorways, they're in windows, they're in little squares.
Well, that's part of the Easter eggy funness of this whole trilogy, as we have dropped that. It is a trilogy. Everything is connected in some way. We're introduced to Elijah, Samuel L. Jackson, through glass. They're in a department store. Everything's in a mirror. It's in... if you notice that first scene, everything's a reflection in a mirror.
Yes.
And then his introduction is a reflection on the TV screen. And then we're introduced to David through his reflection in the train car window. So it's all through glass.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I pick up on that. So we're framed in a doorway, and then it's in a mirror. So we're like expanding the comic panel as you would on a page. And also we introduce the color purple, because Elijah's mother is dressed in purple here, and people kind of, the main characters have their own color motifs. David, as we'll see, is green, and Elijah's is purple.
Yeah.
And the next character is also introduced, and his color motif, if you pay attention, you might remember it if we continue this series.
Cool. I also noticed that right off the bat, the music felt very late 90s, early 2000s, which makes sense looking at the time that this movie was made.
It's terrible.
But it was, and it kind of made me chuckle, because there was this whole period of time in like the late 90s up to the mid 2000s where music was centered around strings over a drum machine. And this movie totally used that. And hey, you know what? I'm not even mocking that. I like strings over a drum machine. They can be kind of cool, especially if you add like, a high aria over it, or a female voice over the strings, over the drum machine. Like that's and you think about the Matrix when they're picking out their guns, the Matrix when they're training in the Matrix for the first time.
Can be used
correctly. Drum machine,
Can be used nicely. Fucking Inception blows it out of the park with the way they use music. There are a lot of movies that use music well. This one dropped the ball. Like, it just does not fit for me. It doesn't do anything for the movie for the most part. It's just late 90s, even though it's 2000. Music, blah, blah, noise, loud. We did the thing. Like, it does nothing for me.
That's interesting that you would pick up on Inception, because the composer for this is James Newton Howard. And James Newton Howard, other things that he is noted for working on, he worked with Hans Zimmer on Batman Begins and The Dark Knight.
I see it. Yeah, no, I see that. I mean, you got to start somewhere, but yeah.
I mean, he started, it looks like his first film score that he really got anything for was Pretty Woman. He did the film score for Pretty Woman, Fugitive, Space Jam, Peter Pan, King Kong.
It's not a knock of like, oh, he's untalented, I just hate it. It seems like they didn't want a lot of music in this movie for specific reasons, and this is what they ended up going with. I just think it could have been a different choice in general and worked better with the movie, but I also critique that for anything. So,
well, put it this way: I'm watching this movie, knowing that I'm trying to look for musical themes, leitmotifs, that kind of stuff. And I make this note at the beginning: 90s to mid 2000s music vibe, strings over drum machine, yada yada yada. In all of my notes, the very last thing that I mentioned, and the only other thing that I mention about music, is in the outro when we hear the 90s thing happening with the strings over drum machine again. So it's kind of like bookended with this very, I don't want to say traditional, but very tropish, expected time frame, contemporary for its time, music. Other than that, even as like trying to listen for the music, I didn't really notice much at all. So
there is not a lot of it.
It could be argued that that is a sign of something like not great with the music, that it never really stood out. It never really took front and center. But I do know that a couple of film composers that educate others on how to do it, one of the lines that they a lot of times use is that a good soundtrack happens without you noticing it. So like if you've ever watched a movie and at the end of it you're like, man, that was really good, and you try to think of the music and you can't, some composers would think that that would be a success. So I don't know. Like, I'm in the same boat. Like, I couldn't tell you. If you told me to rate this soundtrack, I would have to listen to it again. I'd have to go back and redo it again because I don't remember. I watched the movie. I had a great time watching the movie. I watched it with the intent of like paying attention, and I still don't know exactly what the music was doing. So
we meet Elijah, and something is wrong with Elijah. When he was born, his arms and his legs were broken during delivery.
Which, like, not to put too fine. Sorry, I'm cutting you off again. This is the first note I took in this entire thing for the opening, is how awkward it is. Like, there's just a baby screaming. The mom is clearly not noticing that, like, that's not the most normal thing, and everyone is just standing there. They're not trying to help. They're not trying to comfort. They're just standing there and staring. Like, insane to me.
And there's also the tension of we don't know if the mom's going to be in trouble. Like, they're kind of giving her the look, like, what did you do to this child? I'm like, what kind of movie did we sign up for? Is this like a movie about abuse? Or?
Very interesting allegory. And then the only man to come in to actually approach her or say anything to her is a black man. Which, I mean, for the time, I guess it makes sense a little bit, but it also just threw me like, I mean,
well, think about that. Think about the tension I had. Like, because I had never seen this before. I had no idea going in. So watching that first scene, I'm like, what in the hell are we about to watch? Is this woman like going to get unjustly accused of trying to abuse her child? Or did she actually do something to this child? And now imagine that tension. But if you had an old white man like talking down to a black woman in distress, that would even add more to it. So maybe they had literally to kind of put a black man in there.
But she's not. She's calm. She doesn't understand. She's like, I just had this. Exactly. That's the other part that doesn't sit well with me when I'm watching the opening of this movie is everyone is freaked out. Clearly on their faces. They're not approaching her. They're not talking to her. She is calm as can be. This baby is screaming. She clearly hasn't looked at it too hard. I mean, granted, she just gave birth in a department store in a back room or something somewhere. So,
yeah, what is the setting here? I had a question about that.
You do you. Like, I'm not questioning your sanity. Just like, damn, there's a lot getting thrown at you in this first scene, just emotionally, which I mean fits for the theme that is this movie in a way. To come in and be like, this child was born with broken arms and broken legs is crazy. Just the way that it's set up. So his thing is osteogenesis imperfecta, right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. Okay.
So we then come to present day, and we meet Bruce Willis's character, David Dunn. I'm going to say a couple of other names. Clark Kent, Peter Parker.
Yeah.
We got David Dunn here. Classic superhero.
Alliteration.
Yeah,
yep.
alliterative superhero alter ego name.
Otto Octavius.
And he is on the train that will derail and not injure him. One thing I don't remember about this movie, because the last time I saw it was years and years ago. He's that woman sits down next to him, and you see him take his ring off his finger, and I was like, wait, I don't remember him playing like a scumbag. what is he doing here?
That scene is so awkward.
Yeah. I wrote, is he sleazy? Question mark.
Yeah.
And I mean, he looks sweaty at the same time too. Like he looks very nervous, and I'm like, oh man, is he going to be sleazy? Thankfully, we find out later that he had every reason. Maybe he shouldn't have been wearing his ring to begin with, it looks like, because he and his wife were,
on the outs. Yeah.
And had been for a while. It seemed like they were in a comfortable, quote unquote, comfortable situation with them not being together but living in the same house kind of thing. So
yeah, and it's a real awkward conversation. He's like, you want to read this magazine, lady? And it's
yeah, he started every conversation that happened there. Like she would let the conversation die, and then he would come back to it. So like even the ring off and the way that he started the conversations, both we're setting up our character as kind of like a sleazy guy. But I will say that all of his lines were actually kind of charming. Like when he talked about, you looking for a synchronized swimmer or something like that. Like I was like, okay, that's actually like if this woman were single and she were just there to hang out, that would probably be a pretty decent, opening segue into a larger conversation. So I'm like, all right, he seems charming, even though he's coming across a little bit sleazy. But the number one thing I wrote down early on, and I kept writing it down over and over again, was, but he seems really sad. His smile never touches his eyes. He's always sad. And sadness, sad. Even in the first scene, I wrote it like 4 different times. Like, I don't know why he seems so sad. And obviously by the end of the movie, we start to understand why. And that seems to be like his primary motive for the character. So I'm like, okay, good job from the actor, good job from the writing. And, I obviously, me as somebody that's never seen it before, I picked up on it right away. So
it's so funny that you guys picked up on it. It's like, oh, is he being sleazy? It's kind of charming. It's whatever. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there going, this is weird and awkward. I mean, yeah, it could be seen as charming if you're just hanging out chit-chatting with a stranger, but it just builds, and you see how uncomfortable she gets to the point that she moves her seat. Like,
yeah.
No, it's not charming after a point. It's not anything. It's like you hit a weird nerve. Okay, we're done. I'm going to move now because I no longer feel comfortable and safe.
But this does serve, basically it's exposition, because what we get out of this as the audience is the first iteration of I'm afraid of water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and we learn, like I said, I learned from a standpoint that he is sleazy. Well, he had a sleazy moment, and he did not seem comfortable with it, though. He wasn't. He was charming when it came down to it, but he didn't know how to hit on a woman.
Not in his element.
Yeah,
he was very much out of his element. So he didn't seem like the kind of married guy that he's used to doing this. And I was even thinking, like, I think I wrote a note about, if he was an experienced infidelitous person, then he would have known that keeping the ring on might not have been a bad idea. Like I used to know men that went up to the bar that would keep a ring in their pocket to put on just so that they could hit on women with a ring on their finger. And they had this whole reasoning why, and I won't get into it. But like, so yeah, but the main thing that I picked up on is that he's out of his element. But he's sad. And, so like, I don't know. It worked for me because I see a man that is trying to get out of his element, but his sadness is overriding everything. And no matter what he does, it comes across like a poor me or woe is me kind of guy,
Then that comes back. That's what I wrote down. I guess we'll talk about it at the end. But one of the overarching theme, or maybe the only overarching theme in this movie, is being true to yourself. Is kind of the sense that I get, and what that gets you, and what that does for you. But so after he creeps out the woman and she skeezes off, the train we're shown that it's moving abnormally fast, right? And he gets a little worried and looks around. And this movie does a good job of the show don't tell, because we are shown the train moving fast and him getting worried, and then we cut to him in the hospital.
Yeah, well, I mean, don't we cut first to
His son? Yeah.
Yeah. And as soon as we saw the train, or we heard the news story, I was like, yeah, that's what I mean. I put together 2 and 2 that as soon as he was looking around and you got the sense that something was wrong, that his train was probably going to be derailed, or some kind of major accident was going to involve a lot of loss of life on that train. And then we see the son sitting on the, which I thought was fun, like watching the TV upside down, and how we that seems to be something that they messed with a lot during the movie, is like spinning the camera and turning thing 180 or 360 degrees, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like later when he's got the comic book and he spins it around, but we don't get it spun around. We stick with it upside down. It's
yeah. But then they do give us that final 180 degree rotation at the very end. So like, it's kind of like the director editor going, yeah, we're going to mess with your perspective, but we'll give you just a quick second where you can see it normal, and then we're taking it away from you.
So I love this scene when we cut to him in the hospital. And again, it's framed like a comic panel. There's curtains and we have a guy laying in the foreground, and we see the blood slowly start to creep across this guy's abdomen in the foreground. It's very upsetting.
Yeah, and that was a long shot too, that entire like single shot, and like we just stayed there. Like most movies, like there's like a language to movies that we like kind of accept, that we don't really think much about. But this scene made me very aware that we are not doing what's normal in movies right now. We should be cutting to a side profile of Bruce Willis's face, or maybe over the shoulder of the doctor at one point, or whatever. But we didn't. We just stayed. We're in the other room watching somebody fight for their life and possibly die, looking at a man that doesn't even have a bruise on his nose or anything, you know.
Yeah, this movie makes you uncomfortable and gaslights you. That's what it does.
Yeah, well, there you go. I could see that. Then after that, we stay there for a good 5 minutes. That scene seems to like linger
There's a long
lot,
scene.
Right? Yeah,
this movie has some long takes in it where you're like, maybe a little less of that.
And so do they do these funerals, like, pardon my ignorance, but when they have a mass event like this where many, many people die, dozens or hundreds or whatever the number is, do they have these mass funerals where they just spend like 30 seconds on each person and they just have a bunch of boards at the front? Like this, it felt weird to me. It felt like it's almost like rude to the people that died, almost, because you're not really spending.
Hey,
that's, you know what I'm saying? You're getting the 30-second tag as your funeral. Does that happen?
That's church for you. It's so like so and so's name. May they be blessed, or whatever he says. Just the same thing. Like moving on. It's so just disheartening to hear people given that no real attention given to their life and their death, just a biblical phrase, and now we move on.
Yeah, I don't know if that's an actual thing. Like, as you know, we're all very churchy people. No, I have no idea. Like, I know they will do mass services and everything, and mass, like, all kinds of stuff to memorialize people and remember them, but I don't think I've ever heard of one like breaking it down person by person. It is an overall, like, they might have somebody come up and talk if you're feeling it like not the best memories, but I remember a lot of like Sandy Hook things, and there were lots of parents talking and other people who knew the teachers and everything coming up and talking, having moments. But not like an individual, like 30 seconds, here's your time to shine, you're a star, all right, moving on. Like, I don't think that's a thing. I hope that's not a thing, because that's terrible.
Yeah, because I'm looking up the numbers too, and according to the plot recap, it's 131 people died.
Yeah.
So that's like, I was thinking about it from two different points of view. I'm thinking about it from a personal point of view. What if that was my wife or my best friend or something like that, and they got 20 seconds? They got Alan Jackson. He was known for putting on his boots, right foot first. And that's it. So this person's life gets summed up in 2 sentences, and none of which are really important to this person. And then that feels offensive to me. But the other side is, I'm looking at it from like a production point of view. If you're doing the funeral, if you're putting on the funeral, how am I going to spend more than 20 seconds on 131 people and have this not just be like 2 hours long where we're just reciting each person's, then you get families that will leave after their person is called
I mean,
or something like
you don't have to. It's a mass memorial service. You show your priest or whatever up there giving the eulogy. You have a moment where they're talking overall broad spectrum to the people, show the pictures, show the candles, show the audience. I don't think you had to hit every person. I think they're specifically trying to hit every person to be like, it was varied, it was all these people, and just one dude survived. I think that's their main point, is that, oh, there are all these people, all these things. This is a big tragic event. Don't lose sight of that, but he's alive.
Right. It's also driving that home to him. It gives him that to think about.
Yeah. I understand narratively the reason why we did that makes 100% sense, because we really got to push home how big of a deal this is, that every single person died, and it's a huge deal that's making like national news, yada yada yada. Also of note is before we got there, this the scene where he's leaving his hospital room and he sees his son in the hallway. That I thought was really well done, and that's kind of what we were going off of earlier. The way they did sound in this movie, that like. If you remember that the sound when he comes out of the hospital room and he's walking down the hallway with the victims' families and stuff like that. First off, that looks so believable. Like the people, like there was this one heavier set guy that was wearing his shirt tucked in over some khaki pants or whatever. And I was like, I've seen that guy. I've seen dozens of that guy in different hotels and hospitals and yada, yada. But I thought it was really well done because it looked like a real group of people that would be outside of a hospital. They didn't look produced Hollywood people. They looked just like regular small town people. But interestingly enough, we get no sound at all. All we get is the rushing, like, whoosh sound, which to me, I don't know, it's probably different for anybody, but for me, it signified that there was blood rushing in his ears. Kind of like when something is so stressful that you can hear people talking around you, but it just kind of bounces off your psyche a little bit. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting choice. Him leaving the hospital, walking through these dozens and dozens of people that are all mourning the assumed loss of their loved ones. And even when his son runs up to him and he's hugging him, and now we have a moment of, a release of that grief or whatever, he's still not listening. Like his ex-wife comes up to him and kisses him and talks to him, and he's not hearing a word they're saying.
Yeah.
He's all internal. It also sets up like, oh, something's going on in the marriage, because the son puts their hands together and they let him drop as soon as he turns around and starts walking away.
Mm-hmm.
So after the memorial service, that's when he finds the note on his truck.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what does the note say again? How many days?
Limited edition.
Yeah, limited edition. And
it says limited edition on the top, and then it says, how many days have you been sick?
Mm-hmm.
How many days in your life do you remember being sick or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
And there is a purple motif to the note.
Yes.
I don't remember the purple. I remember the silver of the limited edition.
There's purple.
But I believe you, but it didn't. That's one of those where it was subtle enough where I didn't feel beat over the head with it.
So he's questioning that, right? That's a good question. And so,
okay, did anybody else when limited edition came up? Am I the only one that thought members only? I thought that was it didn't. When I saw a white card and like in silver letters and it said limited edition, I laughed a little bit. Like it was, I'm sure I was the only, if I was in a theater, I would be the only one chuckling, but it felt very members only, like for your eyes only, that kind of thing. Like,
well,
but it's just sitting out in public on my car. And then we find out it's the name of his art gallery. And then I have to admit, like, I liked a lot about this movie, so this might be picking a nit a little bit, but I thought that was a really bad name for I thought that could have been done a little bit better, because again, my mind went to members only.
Well,
or
that's
premium club.
That is a standard comic book term, so you are incorrect. You're just wrong.
That's fine. Yeah. It made me laugh because I'm like, it's limited edition. It's premium power.
And to him, he might have that context, but I own many limited edition comic books. So,
and I was not expecting this to be a comic book movie
right,
at this point.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, this was still just a drama that this man lived through a weird, and neither of you, thankfully, told me any fucking spoilers about this, so I had no clue what to expect. So yeah, I hadn't put together any comic book connections at all.
So he goes to work to inquire, hey, how many days have I taken sick? And we learn that he is a security guard. And we get a nice sort of little preview establishing shot of basically his superhero outfit, which is it's very, very cool to me just because it's like this rain hood, right? He's afraid of water, so he's a security guard wearing armor against water, and it's all ties into his whole superhero theme and what he's got going on. And it's kind of a little preview. We see him watching the football game, standing in the rain in his raincoat. Nice sort of framed up silhouette from the back.
Which I thought this was a little bit weird, and like looking back on the story, this is a misdirect for misdirect's sake, it seems like. Because if I was the kind of person where I have never been injured in my entire life, I have never fallen ill in my entire life, and if somebody were to say to me, hey, when was the last time you called in sick to work? I wouldn't sit there and go, I wonder. You know, it would be like somebody saying to me, when was the last time you were a woman? Never.
Right,
like
it's never happened
this
to me.
is the state of my life. Like I am familiar with the state of my life, that this weird anomaly that other people get every once in a while, I have never experienced that. Like if I don't know, it felt very why would he even ask his boss unless he were looking for a raise? And we're led to believe that was not. So early on, I started thinking, like, does this dude have some major memory problems? Because anytime anybody asks him anything about his past, he looks really, really confused.
Well, it comes back to the whole gaslighting thing. He is, in his mind, decided certain things didn't happen the way they did. Or else, if you were running around, you'd never been sick, you had survived multiple accidents with not a scratch on you, etc., you would start to gaslight yourself and, or at least trying to convince yourself that that's not really what happened. Like, there was another reason for it. There was another excuse for it. Because if the reality is that you've never been sick and you can't be hurt, like, you have a whole different thing to come to terms with in your brain. Beyond, hey, I just don't get sick. That's kind of cool. Like, you gotta figure something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
This movie shows that it shows he's really thinking about that, right? Because then the next scene is him middle of the night and he's awake and he wakes up his estranged wife in her separate bedroom to ask her, hey, do you remember me ever being sick?
Yeah. Like, it's something he's now having to really focus on, and he's so far not really liking the answer he's coming up with, because he can't put a fine point on it. He can't understand why. Like, it's just, okay, nope, that is weird. Why did that stranger notice that might be a thing for me before I did? You know, like, there's other things going on there.
Yeah. So maybe me picking up on the memory was appropriate, because a part of me was thinking that maybe whatever is going on with him, he's not specifically trying to, like, obfuscate the truth. He just doesn't remember a lot of what happened. And then I started thinking that had something to do. And maybe this was just like a normal psychological phenomenon. And I was equating this now, because I started picking up on that maybe this is a superhero origin story. So I'm thinking, like, does his superpower have something to do with his memory loss? I started even going into, are his family all FBI plants that are following around these super people? You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe part of him is like, his wife is going, his son is going blah, 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 blah. And he's kind of like, even as later on in the story, when his wife was saying, were you standoffish with us for a reason? And him going, yes. I imagine him going, because I don't know who you are. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe in the back of his mind, he was like, because I'm told every part of me that tells me that you're a part of my life, there's another part of me that goes, I don't know who the hell you people are.
I mean, the other perspective of it is, I don't know who I am, so I can't trust myself around you. And I think that's more again, what it
looking
is.
back on it, it makes sense more now. But as it was unfolding, the memory thing was a big, huge clue for me. At least I thought it was.
And you said so. This is just perspective. I enjoyed Samuel L. Jackson far more than Bruce Willis in this movie. So for you guys, it's a superhero origin story. For me, it's a supervillain origin story.
Well, it's both.
It starts out with him. I mean, it is. But whose movie is it really? Who do we start and end with?
Well, okay. Well, then
who are we actually following? Who's pushing the story along?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a duality. I think both of these characters are equally important to the story. I think that they kind of, and this is going off the interviews with M. Night Shyamalan, that he said that that one can't exist without the other, so it was important for him to have the movie like split down the middle.
Right, they're both important to each other, just like all good superheroes and their arch nemesis.
I mean, yeah. Well, I guess I'm basing some of it off of other things, but I don't know. I feel like it's there's the balance, there's the back and forth, but this is Elijah. This is Mr. Glass. This is his movie. Like this is we're getting David, we're getting his origin story, but it's kind of like is it The Killing Joke or whatever? It's the Joker's story. Like this is not the superhero story. We're getting it. We're getting the glimpses of it. We're seeing the things, but we're here for a different unveiling.
Speaking of, the next scene we go to is another flashback to young Elijah, where we see him reflected in the glass of the TV.
Yeah, when he gets his first comic book. Well, not his first, but when he starts getting the comic books for going outside as a reward for interacting with people. The only way for him to delve into his fantasy that he wants to be in is for him to involve himself in reality that he doesn't want to be in. That I think a lot of us nerds growing up in the 80s and 90s, like this is like, that was my life. Like, oh, I have to go deal with people in order to go get a book so I can go home and read my book for the next 2 weeks. You know?
Which, like, I don't know, it makes sense for him. He's fragile. Like, his bones are gonna break. They're calling him Mr. Glass. You want him to go hang on in the freaking park where they're playing basketball and pushing each other on the playground? Absolutely not. I'm not crazy. You want me to be in the hospital? Like, what?
He's got a million ways for people to mock him in his life. Whether it's his physical issues, whether it's the fact that he comes from apparently a fairly poor family, he's black in the 70s, you know what I'm saying? Like there are a lot of things that socially that would make him, you know, they could give him reason to not want to go out and deal with a bunch of people.
Yeah, it does a great job of setting you up for sympathy for this character, because that it was tense watching him like go out, and because I get exactly what he's feeling, you know. It's not physical, but I've felt like that mentally, you know, fragile mentally, where you don't want to go interact with anything, and no, I want to stay here and stay inside and be just on my own. But you gotta. His mother pushes him to get out of his comfort zone to interact with society and life. Live your life is basically what she tells him. You have to live your life.
Yeah, and there was honestly, because I didn't know what to expect from that when she had the gift outside. I didn't know where that was leading. I was happy to see her following him to make sure like she wasn't like gonna break anything. Like I didn't know what to expect from any of these characters. I didn't know if she was a villain too. And then as soon as I saw what she was doing and I understood what she was doing, I went immediately to that's kind of sweet of her. But then I was also like, but is it? Like, cause then I guess that's more of a parenting thing that I wouldn't understand, that like, you know, the boundary between making your child comfortable and forcing your child to go into uncomfortable places to experience new things and to broaden their character and their horizons, that kind of thing. So I don't know. I thought that was, I left on that was really sweet of her. And I thought highly of the mom, and putting those two scenes that we've seen her together, I was like, I like her. She seems like a really good mom. I mean, I don't know. Some mom somewhere might go, oh, I wouldn't do that. But I thought she was pretty cool.
Yeah, but that's all the parenting. It's all subjective. You can't tell me what's right and what's wrong. I'm not abusing my child, etc., etc. She's looking at someone who's very fragile and has every reason to not go in the world or try to make a friend or go to a playground. And she's like, she's trying to convince him it's okay to live your life. Like, something bad might happen, but you're not gonna die. Like, it's not gonna end your entire world. Like, make sure you are out and experiencing your life. So I get it. I get a lot of that. Double
this scene it gives us that cool spinny comic book shot, and then I laughed because the mom this is his M. Night's next movie after The Sixth Sense, and the mom says this one has a surprise ending, and I was just like, oh you M. Night, you card, you blowhard.
Yeah, that's all of these markers that they put. Yeah, so I didn't know it was M. Night movie, but all these little markers that they put early on, like even when they show Samuel Jackson as the art dealer, and he's talking about how they accentuate the qualities of a villain and they make his head bigger than his body and blah, 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 blah. And the hero has a very chiseled jaw, yada, yada. I was like, oh, so this is an allegory for the movie that we're watching right now. They're talking about the movie that we're watching right now. And then it became, so spoiler, I'm not going to jump ahead to what I thought of the movie yet, but there wasn't a single twist in this movie that caught me. I knew that Samuel L. Jackson was the villain well before we got to that point. I knew that Bruce Willis was a superhero. Like, by the time he started working out in the basement, I was like, all right, he's just going to keep going and going and going because he's a superhero. So, like, every time it felt like the movie was like, aha! I was like, yeah. And
right.
And it was partially due to these scenes. So like, it didn't feel, but now don't get me wrong. I still enjoyed it, but the twists weren't why I was here. I was here for the slow build. I thought the build was fine, even without a twist at the end.
Yeah, which a lot of people did not care for from the superhero movie. And, so two things. M. Night Shyamalan is in this movie, I believe, somewhere, or the next one. I don't know if he's actually in this one. His brother is. Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, I know he's in there somewhere because he comes back to the other ones, and it like all of them connect, obviously, trilogy. But his brother is the man that gets refused the comic book art from Elijah.
For my 4-year-old son.
Your 4-year-old. No, absolutely
he
not.
He just tells him no. He's like, get out of my...
Which is great. Like, I love that. I love that he's like, no, I have standards. I don't need your money. No, absolutely. Get out. Goodbye.
The other thing I'd like to point out that I thought that these two people were connected, that Bruce Willis and Samuel Jackson, David Dunn and Elijah were both connected in the sense that every time an injury was leveled upon David Dunn, he would not get it, but Elijah would.
Oh, that would be fucked up.
Yeah, and so that's why I thought it was going to be this weird thing like, it's a wonderful superpower for you, it's a horrible curse for me, and how their lives went in completely different directions.
It is. It is, but it's not in that way. So the running theory is that David also has the same disease. He's just on the opposite spectrum because there is another there is another version of this disease where it is high density muscle where you can continue building your muscle and then it becomes difficult to run and move and they cannot swim. They do drown. They do have this fear of water, which the checks and balances. That's why it's Elijah's. I don't know how we're jumping around in this movie. I'm just talking about a movie. This whole, he's looking for his other half because he can't be the only person like this and he's not.
Now, did we ever discover, is that an actual disease? Okay, I'm looking it up right now.
It is.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah,
cool. The next scene that we have is where they're at the game, and then we have Bruce Willis at the stadium, at the game, wearing half of his costume, and there's, again, the moment where there's no sound, and I equate that to blood rushing through his ears, and he's not really listening to what's going
it's his
around.
Spidey sense.
Yeah, then I figured out later on that it is kind of his Spidey sense, but that was, again, another choice that we are in a very, very crowded environment, a place where there are a ton of people, and you're thinking even if he's telepathic or something, we're going to have a lot of overlapping voices, but no, none of that. All we hear is just the rush or like wind or surf or something very white noisy at that point. I thought that was an interesting choice.
Yeah, this stuff at the game is interesting because we learn later that it's like touch is how he gets his sense of, being able to tell who a criminal is. And they show he lightly bumps into that guy that he calls out to suspect of carrying a weapon. And if you'll notice, they all have garish colors. This one is a little more subdued because it's like desert camo, but there's bright orange in the desert camo.
Yeah.
And even his camo stands out in that kind of environment.
Yeah. Which, the build, not slow build, but the build of, anxiety and anxiousness of, Elijah running down the stairs.
Oh my
God.
God.
What's gonna happen.
Yes,
and it's the manicness. He does not care. He is on a mission. Clearly he's not okay. It doesn't matter. He knows what can happen. He knows how bad it can be. And he needs an answer to the question in his brain. And once he gets it, he kind of relaxes. His body is broken. He's laying on the stairs. Who knows when somebody's gonna find him, even though it's a crowded stadium. It doesn't matter. He found out that, hey, David knew there was a gun on that person, or that he had something bad. Like, that's all he needed.
Yeah, verifying that he has some kind of superpower.
Yeah.
Yeah, that scene, the way I was doing my notes, I was writing something beforehand because I was writing psychic. I didn't see that coming. Is this related to the overbearing sadness that he has? And as I'm writing that, that's when Elijah started tumbling down the stairs. And I was like, nope, I have to watch this. I have to see this from the very beginning. And I watched it again after hearing what had happened. So I was expecting to hear all these bones cracking and stuff like that. Oh my God, that was such a hard scene to watch. Like, they don't show anything too graphic, but just knowing what is going on, it was difficult to watch.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, it's super tense, and my notes for that scene was just like, oh my God, as he's going faster down the stairs, I just drew the like cringe face emoji because that's how I felt like my teeth were gritted, and I'm like, oh no, Elijah, don't.
And I think we can all agree that unless you're a supervillain and you're Mr. Glass, that's your name. If you're the kind of person that you have to use a cane, I would not recommend getting one made out of glass. It's just for the record.
Like, seeing it break, I was just like, choices were made. Like, I get it. It's your whole motif. It's your thing, your theme. You glass, yay! But stupid.
That was form over function for sure.
Like, what? Your car is padded. The inside of your car is padded, but you want with a glass cane?
Yeah, mm-hmm. You might as well have spikes on all the ends and have like rose thorns and stuff like that.
Yeah, like it's not the Met Gala. Get a normal cane, you'll be fine.
Yeah, and I think the next scene after this is when the kid confronts them in the kitchen, right?
No, that's a little bit later. This is the start of that. It's worth noting of saying that his son was with him when he went to talk to Elijah, and Elijah
right.
made his theory known that he's, he thinks he's a superhero, that, the stories are condensed versions of real events from historical things that have happened with amazing people.
And I will say, too, so his constant thing of, like, using comic books as evidence of superpowers, that was cringe for me. Like, even as somebody that I enjoy comic books on occasion, and I enjoy the stories inherent in them, but, like, if somebody came at me and they're like, Kelly, I think you have superpowers. I think you blah, 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 blah. Even if I thought there was some truth to that, I'd be like, where'd you get this theory? And they're like, well, in Amazing Detective number 117, I'd be like, all right, we're done here. we're done.
I mean, yes or no. In the reality of the way that people tell stories and pass stories and actual legends and everything down to each other, it's, it starts somewhere. It's word of mouth. It becomes a fairy tale. It's written into a comic book. It's whatever. It's a song. It's a murder ballad. Like, they have an origin somewhere. There might not be anything there, and I'm not saying superheroes exist, so don't call me crazy. Or do. It'll be fun. But it makes sense that there would be someone to go, hey, this is like a cave painting. There is a story here. Remember, dinosaurs, Bigfoot, whatever you want to believe in. It pops up around the world. It pops up in other stories. It pops up in other things. So I see where they're going. I like that they went there because it's a very smart place to put it. He could have gone with so many other things.
It's just enough for him to hang up on, right? It's just enough to service the movie, and that's fine.
It's just enough to put it into the whole theme of like that. It's all gaslighting of mental illness. Is he crazy, or is this a possibility? Is this child just being a child and trying to fulfill a childish whim of his dad being a superhero, or is his dad a superhero? Like, does he have something special?
It totally made sense in theme of the movie, and that's why, like, I'm not putting a pin on that as this is a negative towards the movie. I think this actually services the story really well because it makes sense for Elijah's character to a certain degree because he puts so much stock in this, and he explains why, even though he's basing it off of comic books, this is, comic books are just one form of media that the human beings have been doing for years, yada, yada, yada. So I get the thematic connection, but, and it was enough for me as an audience member to be in Bruce Willis's shoes and be like, oh, you're out there. Never mind.
So David goes home and his kid is exuding, now that he's heard this and got this in his head real big, my dad is stronger than your dad energy. Mm-hmm. He's like playing touch football with like the star local player and he's like, you could beat him, Dad. And then he's like, nah, I'm going to go work out. And he's like, bye guys, I'm going to work out with my dad.
Yeah.
And like,
which was really weird. I can't imagine one of my friends like stopping to play a game and be like, I'm going to go work out with my dad. Okay, have fun working out with your dad, buddy. And then everybody looks at each other.
None of those kids paid any attention to him.
Yeah,
not one kid looked his way. Not one kid was like, "Oh, where'd he go?" We can't play a game
Just
now.
screaming
We're down
from
a
the
person.
block.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like they found a group of people in a park playing a football game and was like, hey, this is who you're reacting to. We're going to make them sign some paperwork later. They're not actually in the movie,
Right.
but this
Or
is
what
what you're
if he
doing.
actually wasn't playing football?
That's what I got
with them?
from
He was
it.
just like watching them play football, and they're all like, "What is this weird kid
That's
sitting
sad.
doing by the side of the road?" And he's like, "Bye, guys. I'm gonna go work out with my dad." And they're like, "What the?
He's
fuck
gonna
is
be the
wrong
next
with you?"
villain.
Yeah, okay, nerd. You know, like,
Working out with your
good
dad.
job.
Do we need to call CPS? Like,
You tell me, who is your daddy and what does he do?
But then we get the well-known, infamous weightlifting scene, which is one of my first. When I saw it in the theater, I was like, okay, so he is a superhero.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's one of the first tells. With the kid keeps putting on more weight and he's still able to do it. And just again back to now the kid's gonna be like, oh yeah, well my dad can bench press 500 pounds. How many can your dad bench press?
Which, watching that scene, I'm just like, dude, this is your fault. You told him to take more weight off. Looking into his tiny delusional face, knowing he's gonna put more on it, and you just keep going, okay, this is fine. No, I'll be calm. Like, you are raging inside.
how does he put weight on instead of taking weight off? Literally inches away from your face, and you don't notice the difference. Like,
like he doesn't turn around. You don't know there's a difference in the noise. You don't hear him put anything down. Like, it's a weight.
Yeah.
It makes noise. It's making noise sliding on and off of the freaking pole.
Mm-hmm.
Like, come on. Come on. Yeah, I was just like this. I'm not. Okay.
But either way, I'm right there with you, Keith, that this was the first time, well, maybe not the first time, but this was the verification that I'm like, oh, so he is a superhero.
I'm not just like the rest of you. I'm stronger. I'm smarter. I'm better. I am better.
And that's where I'm like, okay, so now I can kind of settle into the movie because I know that what we're watching is a superhero origin story. Like, I've got an idea that we're going to have one big crime that he's going to solve or something by the end of it. And that's where the movie's going to end, with him going out into the world being a superhero for the first time, maybe putting together his first outfit will be the outro, that kind of thing. So I really appreciated this scene for that reason, that it allowed me as the audience member that had no clue what I was walking into. Okay, so this is the kind of story that I can kind of prepare for, and we like that.
And it still leaves questions, which I like, because it's like, okay, does he just adapt to whatever strength he needs for the situation?
Mm-hmm.
What's the limit? You know, we don't really see it. Like, if he
looks like he's struggling with every step of the way too. It's not like he did everything with ease. He struggled with everything, and I'm like, how does that work? Even, like, does he feel different? Does he have to pull from a reserve like Superman does? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, right. So we don't even know the limits of his strength. Like, maybe it's infinite. Maybe whatever the situation calls for, he is able to match. We don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So what comes after that? I didn't write down the scene. So
Glass, after his fall, he ends up seeing David's wife, who is a rehabilitation expert, and I assume he finagled that to have her as his doctor so he could put the worm in her brain.
This is one of those where it felt like an M. Night part where they're like, we are now as the audience starting to get an idea that maybe that accident that he had right after high school, he didn't get injured from. And I got to tell you, even when he's asking the wife, I'm like, okay, we can move forward with this, because I don't know. From an audience point of view, I felt like that was a mystery that I had already solved in my mind. He didn't get injured in that accident. I kind of knew. I mean, it's nice to know why, but it felt like we're setting up a mystery that, I don't know about y'all, but it was already solved in my mind. There was no twist there.
Yeah, this is some of the minor little things that I'm like, oh, probably could have cut this or put something else in there, and it would have been just fine.
Like, I can't imagine being a rehabilitationist and dealing with a client and having them ask you very personal questions about your personal life with your husband. And then even after you say, like, I'm sorry, I really don't want to talk about that. And then they go, okay, so why did blah happen? And then you just keep going. Like, like, I get why we did that story-wise, but I don't see why she would do that. And I don't see...
I do. Politeness of women. It's how we end up murdered. We're too polite. We're not polite enough. It is just a societal thing, which you see over and over again in this movie with, like, the female... Well, we don't get a lot of female characters. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was just about to ask. I don't think it will.
I don't think it would.
No. We got one female character.
But the them being polite and uncomfortable and just pushing it until they're too uncomfortable and then it ends. Whatever their interaction is.
Oh, I also wrote that the doctor talking to Elijah is a real asshole. This guy just fell down steps with his, soft bird bone disease and broke like everything in his body. Yeah. And the doctor's listing off the injury, and rightfully Elijah is just kind of looking off, like probably in pain, probably like, this shit happened again. And he's like, "Hey, are you paying attention to me?" It's like, fuck you.
And even in matter of fact, condescending ways, like, this is going to require at least 8 surgeries and anywhere between 12 and 18 months of rehabilitation. And I hope you're aware. It's kind of like he's chastising him for falling down and breaking his bones. Like, you dumb idiot. Why did you fall down those stairs, you fool?
There are plenty of medical professionals who would. Like, you know how this is. You know this is too risky for you. Why would you do that? Why would you put yourself through that? Now I've got to go through all this surgery for you? Ugh, how dare you?
Like, this is what you're getting paid for. You should, like, the bedside manner of that doctor. Not well done.
Damn it, man, I'm a doctor, not a torpedo technician.
So then we cut to David. What my note was, on patrol. So like he's kind of buying in to the, hey, maybe I am special. And so he goes to work and he walks through the crowd and letting them touch him and touching them. And he starts getting hits, right? Everyone It's really interesting the way they do this scene, because the crowd is kind of drab, but then a woman in a red coat touches him and he gets a little snippet of her, and then the guy in the blue and orange hoodie, that's M. Night, by the way, the drug dealer. Yeah.
Did anybody else have flashbacks to Run Lola Run?
Oh no, but only because I haven't seen that in so long.
No.
Yeah, so in Run Lola Run, like every time she bumps into somebody in her many different paths of destiny that she could go down, she'll bump into somebody and then we'll see a flash forward of that person's life afterwards. And it was like, I know it's very different context or whatever, but it made me think of that. But
this is flashbacks movie. So like we get flashbacks of things. It comes back later with more flashbacks. So a little bit of Run Lola Run. That's a good catch. It's just in the opposite direction.
Yeah. No, and I think it's interesting that we saw I think the way he described it is he'll see when somebody's going to do something wrong. So like or something like that.
Or has done something
wrong.
Yeah.
And the way he describes it is something wrong. So it's not illegal. It's not when there's somebody's going to hurt somebody. It's when they do something wrong. It's kind of like when the person themselves think that this is what I'm doing or I'm about to do or what I did was wrong. So like, for example, and I know it's probably not in this scene, but when he bumps into one lady and he sees her steal jewelry from a jewelry store. And I imagine from a superhero's point of view being like, I mean, I don't know what most superheroes would be like, but if I were a superhero, I'd be like, I don't care about that. Like, I don't care if a multi-billion-dollar jewelry manufacturer has one little thing stolen from them. Is it wrong? Yeah, but...
Yeah, if you're Batman, you pretend to chase her around and then you hate her.
Yeah, but he doesn't. Exactly. He touches several people and he's like, okay, well, that's bad, but is that worth me intervening?
Yeah, exactly. And I appreciated the fact that he bumped into people that were doing or had done or were going to do something quote unquote wrong, but they didn't rise to the level where he needed to go confront them physically or anything,
Right. And yeah, M. Night is the drug dealer that he stops and frisks.
Yeah, I knew it was like in that scene somewhere, but it wasn't like a very obvious, oh, there's his face kind of thing. It wasn't a Stan Lee moment.
And that shows you too that like he doesn't know the timing of what he's going to see either. So like he sees the person with drugs, maybe they don't have them yet, or maybe they already dropped them off. He doesn't know. He doesn't know if they've already delivered them or if they're going to be delivered to them in an hour. No clue. Is that what everybody else picked up on?
I don't know if I got the sense, but now that you're saying it, that makes sense.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about it.
Yeah, because part of me was thinking, like, are we only seeing something from the past, only seeing something from the future? And so then, by y'all's, when you watched it, why was he wrong when it came to that guy?
I think it's the past, like, because he got rid of the drugs or whatever. He was also wearing.
Yeah, I think it's past.
He was wearing a different coat. He's wearing a blue coat in reality when he's talking to him, but in the flashback, he's wearing a blue and orange.
Yeah, I took
coat.
it as all past.
But then, okay, so the minor jump ahead in the timeline later on when he finds out about the person, like murdering that family or murdering that husband and breaking into the family house. he's seeing in the
No,
future.
he had already
No,
done that.
it already happened. He was
and they're
holding
there
them captive in the house.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that had
okay.
already
So
happened.
it always was something that had recently happened. Okay,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
all right. I see. At that point, I thought we were seeing what we were going to see in the future. So, like, okay, so then in that storyline, he had killed the husband and had chained up everybody. And then when did he bump into? Why did he leave the house? What was he doing outside of the house?
Because he's a crazy fucking psycho. He left them in the house, goes to work, and then goes back to the house with the captive people.
Which, like, I don't know your situation, your uniforms, but I'm sorry. I see some dude acting weird running around in an orange jumpsuit. I'm going to point that out to somebody. Like, I know this is the cliche, oh, he's from prison or jail, and that's not how they all work. They're different colors and different levels, blah, 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 blah. But I'm going to be like, hey, y'all see this, right? Like, why? What is he up to? He's clearly up to something. Oh, I'm just going to change this one trash bag and then skedaddle out of here. Bye, everybody. I'm not up to anything weird. Like, yes, you are. What are you doing?
Jumpsuits have been given a bad name.
Even in a
That's all I'm
crowded
saying.
train
I think.
station.
Well, I was gonna say. I think the orange jumpsuit is a tell. You know, you don't see too many.
Like this
good people in
nobody's
orange
picking
jumpsuits.
up on that. I don't care how crowded it is. I know there are some nosy ass people like me who see everybody and observe everything, and they're standing there hitting the person they're hanging out with, or texting, or calling somebody like, "Hey, what the fuck is up with that?" If you see some dude on the news later who is in an orange jumpsuit, I saw him first. You tell me. I will fill you in on what happened. Like, that is happening in that train station or whatever it is somewhere. Like, it's a connection.
So after he confronts M. Night, he gets called to school because his son got into a fight, and that's where we learn from the nurse that his story about how he almost drowned, and this puts doubt into David about his being a superhero or having the ability.
Which again is weird. Like, if I almost drowned, I would need somebody to tell me. Like, what is going on with his memory that he doesn't even remember his own? We're not talking about his early childhood. He was in middle school, I think or like early high school when this happened, right? So, like,
well, no, they said he was 7. I think.
Even then, so like, you know, middle event. If I almost died in elementary school, I remember it. You know what I'm saying? I remember big events from my childhood.
I mean, yes and no. We've already learned that he's disassociating and only remembering the things he wants to remember.
Yeah, he's compartmentalizing stuff. Clearly.
Yeah, it could have just been something he pushed away, and now it's been brought back for some reason, whatever it is. Whether he's just now, his brain has decided he can handle it and not need to hide it away or lock it away or whatever. But yeah, no, he's definitely burying his memories. They're all buried deep down in there.
So that him learning that story combined with the fact that, hey, this guy he just confronted didn't actually have drugs on him has put doubt into David. And his kid tells him he got into a fight because he was trying to stick up for someone, right? You know, and he's like,
yeah, some little girl they were picking on.
And he says, I thought maybe I was like you. And that's when David tells him, I'm just an ordinary man. He's like, this is dangerous mentally for my son to be thinking this. It's probably dangerous for me to be thinking this. I got to get this out of my head, which leads to the gun scene, which is another super tense scene.
It's Christopher Reeves.
Oh my God, so tense. Because as an audience member, I don't know what to expect. I don't know if he's like impervious to bullets or what's going on. I don't know if it's
it really happened. I'm pretty sure it was Christopher Reeves autograph signing. A kid pulled a gun on him. He was in the Superman costume. I believe the gun went off into the audience. It hit an audience member.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So no, it was based on a real event, which I really like that a lot of the things in this movie are based on something somewhere in reality. Even down to Samuel L. Jackson's hairstyle, I believe is based on Franklin Douglas's hairstyle. Like, it's all just some random tidbit, but it's all something. From somewhere.
It's one way to take a very fantastic story like this and
ground it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. He very much grounds this entire story in some way to reality.
And this is the kind of like, okay, so we watch movies like this. We see TV shows like Heroes, for example. This very reminiscent of Heroes. I think there's like this, and of course we have the Marvel franchise, which is obviously DC, all these things that are making millions and billions of dollars. So obviously there's a call for the very overt, over the top, I'm wearing spandex of a bright color kind of superhero. But there are these grounded stories that we see popping up in media that there's such a need for this, like people that are just normal people dealing with normal people problems. You can even see it a little bit in like The Boys, even though obviously that's very fantastic too, but like these really grounded, gritty superhero stories. And I don't know. That's,
I mean, the
I
thing
liked
with The
about
Boys is that their actions have repercussions. In Marvel, their actions don't have repercussions until years later, and then people are talking about all the people who died when, Age of Ultron attacks and blah, 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 blah. Where this movie, it's very real time of like, this event happened and people died. A lot of people died. Like, this thing happened and this many people died. They were affected in this way, X, Y, and Z. A lot of these grounded in reality superhero stories are ahead of their time. Like, we get Heroes, it gets canceled. It comes back. We get this movie, it doesn't do all that well. People don't really pay attention to it, at least from what I was gathering. And then it comes back and we get 2 more, and they're fucking, people enjoy them. No, not the last one so much from what I remember, but people enjoy them enough that, like, it's garnered a little bit of a cult following. Like, it's just ahead of its time. People wanted fantastical. They wanted to lose themselves. There's a thing in film and history in general, with, like, fantastical things or supernatural things and what society needs at that time based on what they're going through, whether it's a depression, whether it's a pandemic, whether, X, Y, and Z. So we'll hit zombies, vampires, superheroes, etc., all based on what society needs at that point in time, which is very cool. And I don't remember all of the things.
Yes, I have studied up on that a little bit too. Like, horror movies become more popular in times of like social distress.
Yeah.
Because you need that outlet to, okay, I need to express the way that I am feeling right now. And this gives me a catharsis to feel these feelings and get them out. And yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I took a class in college where we looked at the different types of sci-fi that come out, because the class I took was all about sci-fi and media. And they looked at how different sci-fi movies and genres can be represented. So you have sci-fi horror, you have sci-fi exploration, you have sci-fi drama, sci-fi courtroom, sci-fi, all these different things, and how the sci-fi can really illustrate what the call of the time is. And I don't know if either one of you mentioned it, but like the zombie phenomenon, right? When, the economy is going down and all these things, like
the economy goes down, zombies spike. And I believe the last rounds we had all of that happening. We got The Walking Dead. We got
World War
Pride
Z.
and Prejudice and Zombies. We got World War Z. We got a bunch of zombie shit coming out and people loving it. I think before that it was vampires, and I literally don't remember the reason vampires come into play, but there's a reason vampires and all of them start to come into play again. So,
heck, you can look at The Matrix and the fact that Thomas Anderson, when he's leaving his life within the Matrix, the dour, horrible situation that he's leaving is a corporate job that pays for an apartment and probably has benefits and stuff like that. So, like, the life that he's leaving in the late 90s is something that a lot of people nowadays are like dreaming. Like, you mean having a comfortable corporate job where I can afford all of my basic necessities? Sign me up. So just different in different contemporaries and stuff. So
the kid decides that, hey, my dad's a superhero and I'm going to prove it with this fucking gun.
Which I kind of hate this scene. Like, I know it's based in reality, and I know, like, a lot of people, this is their favorite scene in the movie. This is so scary. And don't get me wrong, it's scary. But the way, as someone who deals with children 5 days a week, if not more, 11 hours a day, that scene bothered the fuck out of me. Like, don't do this to a kid. Don't gaslight that. I know it's dangerous. I know you think you're going to get shot. There's another way to diffuse this situation that isn't, well, I'm going to leave. You're punishing him. You're causing so much more damage with the way you're reacting to this. All of the things you could have said was, well, I'm going to leave. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Then the kid ends up with an anxious attachment style and abandonment issues later on in life.
Yeah, and then because we're friends. Not, I'm your dad. I'm your dad comes in later.
And
but
also,
we're friends.
you notice he said, "I thought we were friends," implying that they are no longer friends.
But it's also random Easter egg thought that popped into my head. Friends don't shoot friends.
Yeah, I wrote that down because that cracked me up. No shooting friends,
it cracks you up, but it's not. What happened the year before that? 99, right? Am my years messed up? Maybe my years might be messed up. But Columbine. Friends don't shoot friends.
Oh, yeah.
They specifically ran into certain people or told them not to come or to leave, and they didn't get shot. Friends don't shoot
Yeah.
friends. Like they're very random little lines in this movie that connect to something else as well. And even think about
contemporarily this scene that obviously it affected a lot of people. Like it definitely drove home to me. But like, would they have recorded this scene and released it today? A child drawing a gun on their parents in a very tense scene where we don't know if he's going to kill anybody or not. Like, I mean, maybe it would, but
they would. But I think it would be more pointed and less open ended than it is here.
Yeah.
For sure, or the parent would end up shot, and it would have some big life lesson. Blah 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 blah.
It would have a different meaning nowadays with all the shootings and such. So
the fallout from that is that David visits Elijah and tells him to stay away from. Stop doing this. It's causing problems. And we get this is actually my favorite scene because it has my favorite sort of quote or idea, in that he talks about David's sadness in the morning, and the reason that he is sad is because he's not doing what you are supposed to be doing. And I felt that, and I think we've all felt that, and we all get that sense of, what the fuck am I doing? And it causes problems, and that trying to get David to realize that he has this potential is like the thrust of the movie. And also Elijah himself realizing his quote unquote potential, right? It's about being true to yourself is what I pick up as the main theme of this movie. And David is not being true to himself, and thus he is sad.
I mean, yeah, I could see two, but I'll pick up on mine later. Two sides to this coin. But yes, very much being true to yourself, because as much as people are trying to tell Elijah, like, this isn't reality, you're crazy, like, this is stupid, he's like, absolutely the fuck not. I know I'm not crazy, and I'll tell you why. That man's a superhero. I can prove it to you. And then he's got evidence upon evidence to back it up, and then you're questioning your own brain, and you're going, oh shit, oh no.
What? I also thought the camera use here was really well done. That slow pan where David is talking to Elijah and telling him why, and it ends with "Please stay away from my family" was the final quote. That whole scene was filmed really well, where it was like the camera was panning from left to right, and that means that David in the lens is moving from right to left. And we see at the end of, and it was so well timed that at the end of his whole monologue, and where he's saying, "Please stay away from my family," we're getting David going off screen to the left. So we're hearing him say that as he's leaving the frame. And not that matters too much, but it felt very much like, as like the last conversation you would have with somebody, whether it's a breakup or something like that.
It symbolizes moving
on, but it's also like
in
this moment, the camera is definitely there. You can see the person 100%. It's not jumping around. There's no Dutch angles. There's no shakiness or whatever. You can see them clearly, but you know that they're on their way out of frame, and you can see them. You know what I'm saying? The inevitability of the ending, even though they're very clear to you right now, they will not be in frame anymore very shortly.
Yeah. So this conversation puts Elijah into a funk, and we see him kind of milling about a comic book store where he's being sort of belligerent to the clerk that wants to get him out, but it causes him to find Sentry Man, which is, I want to pose the question to you guys, what would you name Bruce Willis's superhero in this movie? Because mine would just be Security, which I think would be a fun name.
Security Man.
he's just Security. It's written across the back of his raincoat, right?
That's nice, but I also would go with "No water, please, man." That would be
because I feel like Sentry Man is what they tried to establish to be his name, but in the later movies, slight spoiler, he's referred to as the Overseer, I think.
Something like that, yeah. I don't know. I haven't put too fine of a point on it. He's generic, strong, but doesn't get hurt. I don't know. I haven't thought about it. I don't think I'd care enough. Like, name him whatever you want. It's.
I don't know. Like, the Shield would be better than Overseer. I think Overseer kind of implies that he's going to be perched up, like, on top of things, overlooking things.
Yeah, he'd end up, if the media got a hold of it and, like, actually went along with, like, oh, the superhero thing, he'd end up Man of Steel. He'd end up one of these classic.
Unbreakable could also be his.
Yeah, the Unbreakable Man.
Yeah. Yeah, he'd get some title like that. I don't think we'd end up with, like, Security Man. Some brand like I don't think that
his name is Don't Drown
But
Me,
I
bro.
do
I do like security though, because that security sounds like if he was on The Boys, that would be his name. That's the kind of name that they do.
Yeah, I could see that
on there. It'd just be
But
security.
that's also in a world that is flooded with like superheroes and everything.
Right.
This is a world where it is not rampant, at least not that we're aware of.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So it would definitely be more special and more slightly fantastical, I guess, at least in my brain. I do like Mr. Glass. I do think that
that's a good
would
one.
end up being his name regardless. It would be some play on that.
By this point, that we've had an earlier establishing shot of David and his wife wanting to try and rework it together. So then the next shot, we go to them at dinner. And I really liked the framing of this, the way they're sitting under a painting of like a tree in full blossom and full bloom. It's kind of like renewal and hopeful and bounty and growth. And, you know, they're trying to work it out. They're trying to get back together, especially after the combo of the train accident and the child pulling the gun on him. They're realizing that tomorrow isn't guaranteed.
Yeah.
Yeah, trauma response.
I thought that this was another one of those scenes where I got memory clues because she said something. She asked him a question. I forget what the question was, and his responses were all incredibly vague. And even going back to the scene where she talks to him in the hallway and says that she wants to give their marriage another try or their relationship another try, like he's very non-committal. Like, I mean, we saw this in other movies that we've talked about before where the generic white guy doesn't really say anything committal. He just kind of sits there and lets other people act to him. And that's how we gain his personality, by him just sitting there and taking the acting that's happening to him. And I'm not even like downplaying Bruce Willis at all. I'm just saying that these scenes, he doesn't exhibit a lot of agency. Like, does he want to get back together with his wife? I mean, we assume so. But we don't see it in his face. We don't see it in his body language. He doesn't actually say it out loud that he misses her or anything like that. Like, I don't know at this point if he even knows who she is. So, like, this is, again, one of those memory clues where she's like, do you remember blah, 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 blah. Oh, she said something like, where did you think we started to fall apart? And he said something about when I stopped coming to you for my nightmares or something like that. And I'm like, okay, that's a little bit more specific, but even then that's like, I don't know. It still feels very vague. Like he's trying to say something. It reminded me of Memento where he says, like, if you don't remember, sometimes you just try to fake it. And that's what it felt like he was doing in a lot of these scenes. Like, she's like, I think I want to give us another try. And he's just looking at her. He doesn't say, like, I don't because you wronged me, or I'm so happy to hear you say that. I would love to take you out on a date. He just doesn't say anything because it feels like he doesn't remember what he wants, or I don't know. Again, and now that I know the rest of the story, it kind of makes sense that he was kind of he does love her, but he has that sadness because he's not living the life he should live, blah, 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 blah. But this is, again, one of those scenes that threw that memory herring right at my face.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to end up like, even not that it's going to end up, because I don't remember it going anywhere in the next movies, but in terms of general superhero relationship bullshit, it's never gonna change. Whether he wants to be with her or not, there's always gonna be the danger for her. There's always gonna be X, Y, and Z, and the excuse for him to not be with her. It's fucking Peter Parker, Mary Jane, over and over again. Like, yeah, they want to be together, but the bad stuff happens when they are together. Bad stuff happens when they're not, but less of it when they're together. Or when they're apart. Like, I don't know. I think he'd always have that conundrum, whether he was disassociating or dealing with memory or whatever else is going on, his sadness of not living his life and his full potential. Like, protecting his family is always going to be his thing. He telling his son, like, oh, you shouldn't be playing football. Your mom wouldn't like that. It's too violent. That's why he stopped playing football.
As they say, with great power comes selective memory.
Yeah. Clearly. Yeah.
So they get home from dinner and Elijah has left a message ranting crazily about how your weakness is water. And what I wrote down about this is it strikes me that the best villains sound crazy but are right.
Yeah.
In a sense. And I was really getting that off of Elijah from this phone call.
Well, I mean, if you wanted to even put it more in reality, the fact that he doesn't bring up that there is this other end of the spectrum for his disease and bone density and everything, that's muscle density, and they do fear water, they do drown, they can't swim, like, it becomes an issue, and I get they don't want to push that probably too hard, because, like I said, it just keeps building, and then they have issues moving and running and doing normal shit, but, like, you have that in your back pocket. You know about this disease. This is your disease. How do you not know the other end of the spectrum? You're looking for the balance to what you've got going on. You don't know that's a thing? Does that just not exist in this universe? So now he's just... I don't... Like, you had that. You're literally hitting on markers from it, but you didn't bring it up. Like...
yeah.
I got an issue with you, Elijah, and it's not that you're a supervillain.
Well, and I wasn't sure, like, how far this went with, like, him, because also there's a little bit of irony. He's like, my weakness is water. I can drown. Your weakness is water. You can drown. And part of me was like, yeah, no shit. Like, everybody can drown.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's my weakness too. So David gets in his superhero outfit and goes to the train yard to survey the damage.
And this is my second moment of music notes where I put strings and drum machine. Go figure. You know?
Oh, I forgot to mention earlier, the one point where I liked the music is his first on patrol scene when he's going with the drug dealer with the M. Night cameo. Yeah. The music's well there of putting us in the sense of, like, you know what? Maybe I am a superhero and I'm about to do this. I liked that, and that was the only noticeable part, because what we're about to see is when he goes on patrol part 2 is that the music is a little ridiculous. It's like very dance music drums with the strings over it, and it was too much, and I was like, not as subtle, not as anywhere near as good.
Not that The Matrix was the first to do it, but it felt like we've turned into The Matrix now. You know?
Right, yeah.
It's that strings over drum machine. That's what it is.
Right, because we've had the reveal. He remembers now, so he's like, oh shit, I am a superhero, so now I'm putting on my uniform and I'm going on patrol. And we get the
yeah, exactly. Yeah, with the somber strings happening over top of it. And then, of course, right after this is where we were talking about earlier, where he touches a few different people and sees varying degrees of degeneracy, that some of which he doesn't think deserves a physical response. But we see what's going on at the home, and oh my God, the next however many minutes that he's at the home were so incredibly tense. And
Yeah, well, I let's point out, I do love the color aspect, because everyone that he interacts with and touches has like a bright garish color on them, and then even further, that's amplified with desaturation when they show the flashback to the scene of whatever he's seeing. But I like the idea of, I'm a superhero out on patrol. I'm gonna stand in a crowd and slightly stick my hands out and let's see what I can find. That's really cool.
And there's something about a man that we see throughout the whole movie, that he fails at connecting with other human beings on an emotional level. He's always standoffish, and the way he finds out about who to help is by physically touching them. He has to physically connect with another human being in order to figure out who's, there's something very sad and kind of fitting in that, I thought.
Yeah, his lack of connection is tied directly to his superhero powers, and his lack of connection is sort of what's bringing him to be sad. So realizing himself is realizing that he has to make connections.
Yeah. Yeah, and the interesting color use, like the woman, I don't remember all the different colors, but I remember the woman with the jewelry having a bunch of red, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I wrote them down. The shoplifting woman is red. There's a woman with a bright yellow shirt who's her crime was violence, and then there's the guy in the green shirt who is about to assault like a drunk woman. And he sees all this, and it's all horrible, but we finally see something truly reprehensible that makes him want to act, is when we meet Mr. Orange Jumpsuit.
Oh yeah, and like, yeah, I'm scanning through now, and I'm seeing some of the different people. The date raped person was wearing bright green, which of course that's
envy, jealousy.
Yeah, and also like there's something to be said about when you're making a superhero movie, and the crimes that people are committing. for example, is sexual assault going to be something you're going to even bring up in your superhero movie? Because there are a lot of superhero tales that don't even touch on that. And like we had talked about before when we looked at The Killing Joke, that stood out, and it was garish in its own way because it directly referenced, I mean, it didn't show any titillating or really violent scenes, but it did kind of hint that sexual assault was happening here. And these scenes as well that we're seeing, like, this is not a G-rated kids superhero movie. People,
Right.
A lot of really nefarious things people do in real life. And that's where it was like, and also this kind of sets up the home invasion too, that like, once you see that this is possible in this universe, then what is that man in the orange going to do to a family?
Right.
Kind of
And
thing,
so David follows him home. He's now got something worth his attention and his effort. And I just love it because it's raining again, and it's essentially his superhero armor. So it's telling us that, hey, this is a threat, right? He's in the rain in his armor. Water is his weakness. So he's already in a dangerous element. And now he's proceeding to go into this home to confront this psychopath. And these are some great silhouetted shots of him like entering the house, and he's like framed in the doorway all in black and shadow and slowly walking through it, and it's so good.
Yeah, very tense. And obviously, I mean, I don't know, very, very high emotion, but very low in sound. Not a lot happening on screen moment to moment, but we're waiting what's going on. It felt like a horror movie almost.
Yes, and to that thought, my favorite part of all this is the shot through the window with the drapes blowing, where he's already he's found the kids and untied them, and he goes in and finds what I guess is the mom, and we're seeing it through outside the window with the drapes blowing, and he unties her, and it's, the drapes are getting in the way visually, and he stops to look outside at the yard, and the guy just kind of almost materializes right behind him, the way the drapes blow.
Yeah.
He's not there, and then he's there. It's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
It's almost like a jump scare, except there's no music sting for it.
Yeah, I mean, typical tense. Like, I don't know. This was not my favorite movie out of the trilogy, as I don't know if I've said this before. So it wasn't like, it was tense, but it wasn't super hitting like these super tense moments that other people were getting from it. I was just like, yep, tense, things happening. Like, I know we're moving on past this. This is his, like, first, I'm a superhero, I'm doing a thing moment. So we need it. But I'm like, okay, we can speed it up a little bit. Like, for my taste, that's where I was with it, but I get it. I understand.
And it
I
also
tend to be a bit impatient with some of my movies.
The scale of this fits the scale of the story, right? Because in the final battle in most superhero movies, as you see today, is like buildings are being leveled and giant beams are shooting into the sky. But this being this grounded movie, it's literally he's just fighting a single person, and he almost dies by getting thrown into a fucking pool.
Oh my god! In that
with
pool
the cover
scene,
on
like
it.
anybody that's had a fear of drowning or anybody that's owned a pool in their backyard, like, oh my god, that is getting caught in the pool lining is one of the that's like, in my mind, that's one of the worst ways to go. Like, what a.
And I do like the kids save him, because he saved the kids first, and so the kids are the ones who put the net handle in the pool to pull him out. And then this fight, it's not even a superhero fight. He's just impervious to damage. So if he can hold on to this guy's neck long enough while he's crashing him into walls and shit, he wins. And I really like that because it's so simple. He's not a combatant. He's just unstoppable, unbreakable, if you will.
He said it.
Yeah. I was a little bit confused. I agree with you that I thought that final fight was really fitting because, like, he just held on and outweighed him. But I also was very confused that I didn't realize that the mother was dead.
Yeah.
Like,
I think she died in interim when we didn't see her, because she was still slightly moving and mumbling when he's first going to untie her.
That's what I thought. So, like even when she slumped over, I thought the reason why she slumped over was just because she was, like, exasperated and so tired emotionally from everything that they had just been through that she was just like, ugh. And then we see in the post credits or in the news story afterwards that the kids were the only one that survived. I'm like, oh, You mean when she fell over? Was she dead? Like, I thought that was a little too ambiguous, and I don't know. Maybe that was intentional, but it felt very I felt misled because I thought she lived. I thought he saved everybody but the dad.
It's the tragedy of it. Like, that's how close he was to being able to save her. She was still alive when he got there. Yeah. Didn't make it to the end.
So after that, where do we head after the fight scene?
He goes to his wife and tells her he had a bad dream, which is to reestablish their connection. His bad dream was going out and dealing with this monster of a human being, and he seeks comfort in his wife after dealing with that.
Yeah, so I'm led to believe at this point, with all my connection to memory and stuff like that, I was thinking so he just saved a bunch of people's life using his powers, or he saved a couple people's lives because he used his superpowers, and he equates this to his wife, that he doesn't want to tell her about this part of his life, that he had a bad dream. And then he earlier on said that he used to crawl into her bed or ask her for help whenever he was having bad dreams. I'm like, did he used to do this before and he just doesn't remember it? Was there a part in his life where he was doing this? So again, I was still pointing real heavily at memory being a major theme to this. Sadness and memory were the two things that I kept coming back to over and over again. And apparently one of them was just a red herring, or like we were talking about, like a psychological phenomenon, not anything connected to the story or anything like that, just a byproduct.
I think it ties back into he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's seeking comfort in his wife, who he's sharing a life with, and he's going out and stopping the bad people. He carries her from her room to his room, I think. And reestablishes their connection there. So he's now firing and doing firing on all cylinders, doing what he's supposed to do, and his life is corrected.
Bringing both parts of his life together: his love for his wife and his family, and his need to be bigger.
I love how he slyly slides the news article over to his son.
Yeah. I thought that was an interesting choice.
Which yet again, child, too calm for me, because I'd have been like,
holy shit!
Told you, fucker. Like, how dare you? Now, you owe me toys. You owe me McDonald's.
Just flips the table immediately and starts running around the room.
Any normal child would have been like, all right, so we're negotiating now. What am I getting for being correct and for the way you treated me? Because fuck you, Dad.
Yeah.
Can I shoot you now?
Oh, dude, he's got blackmail over his dad for the rest of his fucking life. Like, hey, Dad, can I get the new Nintendo console? No, I don't think we can. Oh, all right, yeah, sure.
I do wonder if he could stop a bullet. That's I'm there with the kid now at this point in the movie.
Can we just shoot one of your fingers, like the space between your thumb and your? Can we just shoot one little piece of skin to see what happens?
Just your knee.
Let's just graze your leg. Like, what if we just cut you really badly? Does it?
And so it's the also good ending, because the last scene we get a happy David going to tell Elijah you were right, and that's when we get the quote unquote big reveal.
Yeah, and we get to meet his mom again. And again, all three times we meet Elijah's mom, it is just solidified that she has been an emotionally supportive, a wonderful parent, as somebody that is excited about the things that their son is into. She is the most wholesome character in the entire show, in my opinion. And I was so happy to see her again, because I'm good. I'm happy that she is still moisturized, thriving, unbothered,
in her lane.
Yep.
So this was really cool to me, because he's looking around and Elijah reveals that he's caused all these horrible accidents searching for this counterpart. And as David's looking around, we see it's like a classic super villain layer. There's a computer running scans of blueprints and plans on the wall and the makings of a bomb, all right out there at the open. And he's also Elijah is in full villain costume now, right? It's not even he's wearing gloves that have stripes on it, this fancy coat. It's a really cool cherry on top to see his actual outfit.
So I really enjoy the villain here, the villain in itself, the story of it. He's not some super rich dude. He's not whatever. He probably has money in comics and everything, but not overtly so. He's just a dude using his brain to fuck with people. I need to find this person. How many people died? How many people did he go through? There's a list somewhere in that room or in his home that, not this person, not John Smith, not Matt, whatever. Like, he went down a fucking checklist. Any news story that popped up saying someone survived this, someone did this, like, even that football player at the beginning, the woman on the train is talking about, oh, he's gonna be unstoppable, oh, blah, 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 he's a god, this kid's gonna be a god, whatever. Like, that kid would have made the list at some point. He's huge, he's really strong, he doesn't get hurt, blah, 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 whatever. He would have made Elijah's list to be checked into. So I want to know how many.
He says it too at some point in the movie. I don't know if it was here or earlier, but he's like, the real villain, the one who uses his mind to fight the hero, not his strength.
That's another one of those clues that came way too late, and I'm like, yeah, we already know. We know. You know. And I liked Mr. Glass, Elijah, as Elijah Price, I'm looking his name is now, which he's not alliterative. That's
no,
interesting.
he is not.
But I liked it. Okay, so like, I like his origin story. I like his nemesis alter ego or whatever, you know. I like both of these segments of his life. The only thing that I didn't connect with is that whole connecting thing about him. So basically what he says is that I grew up this way, and I've been looking for this person on the other end of the spectrum that is my equal counterpart and my opposite. And at first I started looking for them just by looking at individual people, and that just took too long. So I just decided, let's just mass murder hundreds of people at a time and see if anybody's left afterwards. And I'm like, really? That's where you're I get it, I guess, you know what I'm saying? But like, okay, when we think back at like really interesting villains, they're either well thought out and they're sympathetic. So you think about in Black Panther, what was his name? Killjoy or something, I forget. The bad guy in Black Panther was one of those where the entire movie, you could watch that movie thinking of him as Killmonger. Yeah. You could look at him as like the hero of his own story, and it absolutely made sense every step of the way. He might have made a couple of questionable decisions, but even at the time, you're like, I get it. You're just being pragmatic. With this villain, like, it never felt like, I never understood, like, let's just kill 500 people and see if anybody's left.
But that's why I like him. That's the point of why I like him, why I think he is a great fucking villain. He is a villain. He does not care. It is a means to his end. Over almost 200 people are going to die, and I might find one. Perfect.
Yeah,
those aren't bad numbers for me. All of Marvel's villains are just people trying to figure out their purpose. They have a glorious purpose. They just want to make some bitches kneel. Whatever it is. they have a sympathetic, there's nothing that's burdened with greatness. They are just trying to be great. They're trying to be successful. Are they doing it the best way? No. But that is a Marvel villain. That is the way, at least in the MCU, for the most part. There's a reason people fucking love Loki. Yeah. There's a reason people can sit there and talk about Killmonger and be like, oh, sympathetic. Like, we get it. We understand. WandaVision, where Wanda has done all of these things, and you're still sympathizing with her and you understand. She has become a villain. She started as a villain. Like, all of these things versus, no, this is a villain.
Yeah, it's a reversal.
He does not care.
You start sympathy for him, and it takes it away from you at the end.
Yeah. I really like
so
it.
I'm with you, and I'm not pointing it out as like this is a major weakness in the character or the story. But for me, it's like the origin story. I give that a 10 out of 10. The who he is now, I give that a 10 out of 10. Those choices of, I'm just going to kill 500 people and see if anybody's left. Nope. Okay, next one. I'm going to do this major terrorist action, kill hundreds of people, see if anybody's left. Nope. Okay, let's do it again. That felt like a 7 out of 10. Like, and that's why it seems so out of place, because the other parts of his character were so nuanced written that this very nuanced, understandable character was just like, ha 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 in one moment, you know?
I get it. I feel like there's gotta be more to it, like that they could have gotten into, some lines that were cut or something. Like, I feel like there was a system of why he was hitting specific things, but
we never saw that. It just seemed like random acts of violence.
No, we don't, and that's what I'm saying. Like, there's probably some other system. He's got all the maps and the blueprints and all the things, and he's having conversations in the bar. So, like, I feel like there's more to it, even though we don't see it. But even if there isn't, as perfect villain behavior. It's the perfect grounded in reality villain behavior. Why does a serial killer kill? Is it because they're mentally ill? Sometimes. Do they try to pin it off on something else? Absolutely, almost 99% of the time. But in reality, they're just a terrible person. They're just doing shit to do it. It does not matter. They don't think they're going to get caught. They want to get caught. There's no repercussions. They just like doing it. They aren't looking for anything. He was looking for something. But he didn't care about anything else. It's the madness that it goes back to in every single scene of him manic, running down the stairs, or just yelling on the answering machine, or trying to convince this person. He saw a news story, and then, yes, he was paying attention to it, but tracked down this person and where he would be to put a note on his fucking car. Like, there's so much more to it that
to the point, where he doesn't even seem to care that he's going to go to jail. He has proved his point, and he is righteous and he does nothing to cover up after David leaves. He's just like, well, I did it.
No, and why would he? It doesn't matter. He knows he's a supervillain. He knows there's a hero and a supervillain and a checks and balances system. He isn't going to stay anywhere for very long, or he can continue doing what he wants, even in a mental institution. Like, it doesn't matter. To him, this is now solidified in his brain.
He found a purpose.
And he's a villain, and he's going to continue his villain arc, whatever that may be.
Yeah. So like I said, I get it. It just felt like a character that was grounded in such nuance, like Killmonger, and then for one period of life, he became the Joker. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, okay. So, and I get that for a lot of people, that's actually part of what makes him appealing. Yeah. For me, it threw me off.
You could argue.
I'm like, no, like, that just seems, it killing indiscriminately just seems a little out of character for the person that I thought I had seen in front of me. But I
could argue that adds to his nuance.
But that's also the perfect, like, yet again, grounded in reality villain person killing people of, like, not my neighbor, not my son. I didn't see it. He was the nicest man. He was handsome, and he was so nice, and
he's got a chip on his shoulder about society from day one, even the way he was born. Would. Like, so, like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Right. I get it.
Which I really liked, like, that they grounded, like, a little bit of the nurture versus nature thing. It was not his nurturing. It was not his mother that caused this. Right. His mother was loving, she was understanding, she is supportive to the end. Like, no fault in his parentage there. But nature?
Yeah.
Oh. That's a whole other story.
I think also, we learned that, like, the biggest problem for him is just that obsession of needing to know the absolute answer. Like, he already kind of knew the answer. He could have lived his life knowing that he knew the answer, but he had to know.
Which brings me back to the point that one of the themes is mental illness in itself. But whether it's dissociating, whether it is delusions of grandeur, like, it's all mental illness somewhere.
Self-doubt.
And it's coming back to the point that they don't arrest him and throw him in prison. They put him in a mental institution.
Also, good acting from Bruce Willis in this scene as he pieces it together. I felt what he was feeling, even though I knew, just from his facial expressions of realizing.
Yeah, because I mean, Elijah had potential to be fucking his Alfred.
Yeah,
he had potential to be his wingman, his good guy, like that. That there could have been a whole different movie and storyline.
Yep, and they're friends who respect each other to some degree at this point, and then he gets slapped in the face with that.
Which, I mean, Harvey Dent Batman.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and to base more off of that, two sides of the same coin, that they both owe each other for their existence. Like, David Dunn would not be superhero security man if it weren't for Elijah stepping in and helping him discover that. And Elijah wouldn't be anything. Yeah. He would just be a man with a degenerative bone disease if it weren't for his
killing people.
A murderer for no reason.
You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
Which is why he needed his opposite
to justify his existence.
As much as it is well, it's justifying his existence, but it's also the same thing in superhero comics. If you watched Gotham and the rest of paid attention to a bunch of Batman anything, because Batman exists, and then we start to get these villains. We start to get the Joker. We start to get other things. They're probably existing separately, but not to that extent, and not as bad until we get a superhero. So we've got this villain running around. He's like, I don't have anybody right now. I'm just some crazy dude. All of a sudden we get a superhero. Now we get a super villain, and he's done some crazy shit. And he is unfazed. Checks and balances. Like it.
And it ends with an 80s Breakfast Club epilogue for each character, which I thought was an interesting choice because generally, and I even thought, like, do we see, and the reason why Breakfast Club came to mind is because I was thinking, do we see these in non-real life stories? Like, a lot of times you'll see it in, like, Catch Me If You Can or something like that, where we're based off of a real life story. This is how that real person ended their days, or this is what they went on to do, that kind of thing. But for us to see it in a comic book fashion, I'm like, is this a normal thing? And then I thought of Breakfast Club. I'm like, oh yeah, we see it in fiction sometimes. And I thought that was just an interesting choice that they just give us one sentence for each person to let you know, just in case we don't make any other movies, this is where they immediately went to right after this. Because of course I'm thinking, like, is he going to tell the police, or is he going to go back there at night and beat him up? Like, what is he going to do to this man knowing that you've killed hundreds of people probably at this point?
Yeah, I really, in terms of, like, performances and stuff, even in the whole series, from what I can remember, these great fucking performances from everyone involved. Like, I can't remember, and it's been a while since I've watched the other ones, and like I said, this was the first pass with this one, but performances are pretty fucking spectacular all around. Like, Samuel L. Jackson just hits vocally, physically, his face, the faces he pulls, like, great. Just fucking great. Also, another thought that I had, Nick Fury's origin story. He just flips a coin. He's just searching for superheroes. It's fine. He gains an eye patch, shaves his head, but he's just searching for superheroes.
Later in life, he restarted things. He paid his debt to society.
Yeah. He's reformed.
Now we get to the part where we review what we thought of it.
Appreciated performances. Like I said, I got into it on the second one. Is the second one Split?
Yep.
Got into it on Split because James McAvoy and that performance looked insane to me, and psychology nerd needed to find out what was going on there, and was surprised, not gonna lie. But this movie, I was bored, not gonna lie. Like, I can talk about it, I can enjoy hits from it, little Easter eggs, all this stuff, but there's a lot of, and it's long, it's drawn out, it's a slow burn, and I was not feeling great still, and I was absolutely not in the mood for a slow burn, even though I liked the movie. Like, even getting to the ending, I was like, finally, let's pick up the pace. Like, I know where this is going, and it gets better. But yeah, no, I enjoyed Samuel L. Jackson's performance more than Bruce Willis, but that's probably a little bit of normal societal influence at this point. It's still fine, whatever. The child's pretty good. Even the mom, Elijah's mom, fucking great performance. We don't see her much, but you believe her, you feel for her, like, great. Music, not a fan. Cinematography was decent. Color schemes, colors, villains, mini villains, heroes. I like the color story and all of that. Costuming was fine. There's nothing special. In terms of Elijah, the other comic, like, I get it. Your name is Mr. Glass. Go with, like, a fucking acrylic cane or something. Like, really? You can get the same look without the danger.
Yeah, it would have just bounced.
No, I liked it.
Instead of break.
Yeah, I would absolutely say, and it's nice to get the origin story after seeing the other things, but I don't know if I would say that you necessarily need to see it. Like, I don't think you need to see it to understand the other movies, or even, it's nice, you can see some of the callbacks and other things in the other movies, but you could just watch, like, a clip show of whatever on YouTube or something, someone's, like, synopsis of it, and you can listen to this podcast and get a decent synopsis of it. Like, it's not something that I'm like, oh, nope, you gotta start at the beginning, the book is better than the movies. No. It's a good movie, it's fine. If it's on TV and you're like, I'll check this out, go for it. But it's, not a must-see and not a must-watch in this trilogy of films. Although decent showing from M. Night Shyamalan, as much as people like to bag on him, I think they're a little wrong for that. But whatever. Unless it's Avatar, absolutely go after that, man. Terrible.
So, Katie, would you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
I give it a thumbs up. It's a fun superhero movie, but it is a slow burn, interesting superhero movie. If you want to watch it, give it a watch. If not, don't convince yourself you have to. You probably won't enjoy it as much.
All right. So, Keith, what would you think?
I like this movie. I've always liked this movie. I do like a slow burn, so I probably like it a little bit more than Katie did. I think it's a good movie for someone to watch if you like watching movies and like thinking about movies and how they were made, because I think it's a pretty smartly made movie. Some of people give M. Night a lot of shit, but he is a good craftsman of film, and you can tell that he has a lot of input from the colors used to the framing of the shots, and it's fun for me to watch. I give it a thumbs up. I would watch it again, and I have watched it several times at this point.
And don't get me wrong, I enjoy a slow burn. This is just on my scale of like intelligent. This could go somewhere else. Sherlock is my ultimate like slow burn. Things are going through this whole series kind of thing. Although it's not super slow because it's a TV show, but yeah, it is too slow for me. Like there's not enough happening, and I get why it was doing it. I know why it was doing it, but I like the other ones more. So
well, I don't have any other ones to base my opinion off of, and I'm kind of in between the two of you when it comes to the slow burn aspect of this particular movie. Whereas at the beginning, when I went in completely ignorant of anything about this franchise other than the fact that Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson were in it. And after I was watching the movie, this slow burn worked really well for me. And like being able to figure out, and I had room to breathe and figure out the mystery of what was going on with David Dunn and Elijah. That was really good. Now the other part, so for the first half of the movie, I'm right there with Keith, where I'm like, this slow burn is the right pace, it's the right feel, it's a little bit creepy, but also a little bit hopeful and curious.
Yeah.
But then once I figured out what was going on with the movie, I was kind of in Katie's point of view, where I was like, all right, can we get this going now? Like once I figured out that he was the hero, every tiny little like aside or deflection or anything like that they put into the superhero story, I was like, yeah. Okay, come on.
So you learned he was a hero.
Which could have been my issue with it, was that I know where it's going.
You learned he was a hero, and you're like, let's fucking go.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, like at that point, I'm like, I want to see him fighting. And even when he's in that final home scene, I enjoyed the tensity of it to some points. But again, with some of it, I was with Katie that like that home scene just took forever, and I'm like, I just want to. I know what's going to happen. Long. I know it's very, very small chance that David's going to die, and the family's all going to die, and that's how the movie's going to end. So if we know that David's probably going to get into a fist fight or something, and he's probably going to win, and he's going to save X amount of people, can we just get there, please? Because like we have spent a lot of time getting to this point.
And I think that helps me put a finer point on it. I get a slow burn at the beginning, and I get the slow burn maybe a little bit in the middle until you start to figure some things out, put some puzzle pieces where they go. But once you're starting to get towards the end, it's got to have some build up. It's got to have stuff going. You got to pick up your pace, because the home invasion story, his first origin fight is not the main focal point. We're going somewhere after this, so get to that point. Like, he's not going to die. We already know he's afraid of water. And he might drown, XYZ, yada, 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 like, move it along. Which is another thing, like, and maybe it's my age, maybe it's just because I'm younger than you, and in the movies I grew up and everything, it's faster pace, versus some of the stuff from, like, 2000s, 90s, going back. I noticed there's a lot more of a slower burn with a lot of them. They are a lot slower, a lot more Game of Thrones, where they're detail,
methodical.
Methodical. I'm trying to think of the right word.
Plotting.
Not the correct time for my brain. Not word. Well, plotting, but like wordsy. Like there are lots of lines. There's lots of words. It's like villain monologue in movie form. Like there's lots of talking, and they're just taking up screen time. They're just padding time. I think that's probably my issue. When I say it's a slow burn, there's too much slow burn.
Well, I would also, but overall, I would give it a thumbs up. I'd recommend it. And I had a good time watching it. You know, these problems that I found were minor problems. I thought overall, our two main characters were wonderfully written, and well acted and stuff like that. I wish we saw a little bit more, we saw more women, because as we noted earlier, this movie definitely does not pass the Bechdel test. I can't even remember there being a second woman. I don't remember there ever being a scene with two women.
Elijah's mom and David's wife are the two women.
Which, I mean...
And they only talk about men.
Yeah, which has its faults in all of the things, but it's also a small cast. Like, when you think about it, this is a very small cast for a movie.
Yeah.
And they're all like that. They're not like full of actors and full of all these bit parts. We're not getting like, oh, the doctor's got 10 more scenes and he's got a plot point and all. No, they very much stuck to the few people they needed to tell this story.
Yeah, they do a lot with a little.
So as far as reception from the rest of the world, this movie ended up doing moderately well at the box office. It did $95 million domestically and $153 internationally. So it made money off its $75 million production budget. Rotten Tomatoes has an approval rating of 70%, so it seems like most people kind of liked it, but it really did well in DVD sales afterwards, and that where it became like a cult following. And that's why, like, when they were asked early on, do you want to do another one of these movies and you want to make this a trilogy, and Shyamalan was like, I didn't have any plans on doing anything like that. And that's why they had trouble getting any kind of funding or anything like that until 2017 or 2016 or whatever, when the next movie came out. So it appears that, like, the public didn't really attach onto this. It did its opening weekend. It did second behind How the Grinch Stole Christmas. So it wasn't really well received, but it wasn't hated either. So I think that's it's worth noting that it seems like our opinions kind of line up with that it was good, but it wasn't like, oh my God, this is the next coming of hero movies and this is what everything should be based off of and stuff like that. Quentin Tarantino loved it. He said it was one of his top movies since 1992. Bruce Willis is considered this is some of his best work in this trilogy and stuff like that. So yeah, seems like most people really got onto it, and the DVD did really well. So by definition, it's an amazing cult classic in that way. So any before we end this, any themes that were present that you would say that this movie tries to
be true to yourself. Be true to thyself.
All right, so now that we finished Katie's pick, we are moving on, as we always do, to the next person in the rotation, and that would be Keith. Keith, do you have an idea of what we're going to be watching next time?
Yeah, I think we'll continue this since the power has been bestowed upon me to choose. And we'll check out Split, the 20 years later follow-up to this movie.
All right. Well,
which I think many would agree is actually the better film, but we'll leave that till next time.
And Katie, you've seen this before, right? And I've never seen this one either. I didn't even know it existed, so this should be interesting for me. So next week we are going to be looking at Split, the second movie in the Unbreakable trilogy. Is that what it's called? Is that such a thing?
I guess that's what we're calling it, or what it's called.
Yeah, the
Unbreakable series, maybe. But yeah, it is a trilogy. So.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you both for joining me. I had a great time. I hope you did too. Any last thoughts before we let our wonderful listeners go?
Samuel Jackson always chooses purple.
Hell yeah. Well, it looks good on him.
It was his choice. It was his choice to be purple.
Color. Why not?
It is a great color. All right, well, thank you all, and we'll see you all on the flip side.
Bye.
Bye.
Give me one more bye, Katie.
Bye.
That should make it in.
That's definitely going to make it in.